Welcome, everyone. I'm Marakita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 by Pastor Frank Hoffman and his first wife, Mary, and launched as a pioneer website in the United States for faith-based animal rights veganism. Today, led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we exist for all people seeking current animal rights vegan resources and offer decades of free animal rights and vegan content, including a huge repository of vegan sermons, Bible commentaries, animal rights strategies, free vegan authored books, recipes, upcoming events around the world, and the works of various vegan authors, poets, and artists. We host current sites for almost 20 vegan and animal rights organizations, including Stop Crush, Unparalleled Suffering, and the Committee to Abolish Sports Hunting. We also maintain nearly 25 archival sites from animal rights vegan activism of past decades. The bottom line is that we work to unite compassionate and empathetic humans across the globe, from the past and present, who honor the dignity of each and every creature so that all beings thrive on a flourishing planet Earth. So today I'm very honored to welcome everyone here. Please give StreamYard permission to use your name. And our guest today is author and biologist Jonathan Balcombe. Jonathan was born in England and has lived in New Zealand, the United States, and Canada, where he currently lives. He's a biologist with a PhD in ethology, the study of animal behavior. His books include Pleasurable Kingdom, Second Nature, The Exultant Ark, and What a Fish Knows, a New York Times bestseller, available in 15 languages. His latest book for grown-ups, Superfly, The Unexpected Lives of the World's Most Successful Insects, won the 2021 National Outdoor Book Award for Natural History Literature. A children's storybook, Jake and Ava, A Boy and a Fish, was released in November 2021 by the Gryphon Press. In addition to writing books and public speaking, Jonathan has worked as an editing consultant for aspiring and established authors, and he's taught a course in animal sentience for the Viridis Graduate Institute, formerly Director of Animal Sentience with Humane Society Institute for Science and Policy, and Department Chair for Animal Studies with Humane Society University in Washington, D.C. Jonathan has also served as Associate Editor of the journal Animal Sentience. In his spare time, he enjoys biking, baking, birding, Bach, and trying to understand the neighborhood squirrels. So welcome, Jonathan. I'm super excited to have you here with us.
Thanks, Marakita. It's good to be here.
Wonderful. Well, I'd love to hear about your experiences as a child. As a child, did you love fishes and other insects?
Everything, all animals, from my earliest memory. I suppose my parents cultivated it to some degree, but whatever gene there might be for somebody who loves animals and wants to be around them, I got that gene. From my earliest memory, I was exploring insects in the backyard and grew up just very fascinated in animals, but also deeply empathic. It was just natural for me to put myself in their position, and that's been something I've always had, for better or worse. It means not always fun, because we do exploit animals a great deal as humans. So that's been challenging throughout my life, but it's also led to lots of discovery and my vocation of studying biology and then working in animal protection for 30 years, and now somewhat retired, working hard on my next book. So a challenging but a rewarding life history so far with animals.
Oh, that's amazing. Yes, empathy is so important. The world can't survive without empathy. So, when did you make the connection? When did you become vegan, and what led you to make this transition?
Yeah, when I look back on my life, I should have stopped eating animals before I did at age 25. Why it took me that long, I don't know, given my feelings about animals as I just described. And then I realized after a few years after turning vegetarian in 1984, I realized that animals we exploit for milk and dairy and eggs are also going to go to the slaughterhouse. They just have to suffer through the trials of having their secretions and their food body products taken away before that happens. So it was no better for them, at the least. And so it made moral sense. I wasn't being consistent with my own values by simply being vegetarian. I needed to shun all animal products. And I guess one could say that's being plant-based if you're talking about just about diet. But for me, it was definitely a holistic progression and personal evolution to veganism. And for me, it's a lifestyle choice. Obviously, I stopped buying leather products and wool products and silk and that sort of thing. Anything that was disturbing animals, harming animals, I didn't want to support those industries. The way I look at it often is economics. I don't want to give money to these industries that wreak huge violence against animals. If I pay them, if I buy their products, I'm paying them. I'm essentially saying, whatever you did to get it there on my plate or in the supermarket, do it again. Well, I don't want to be asking them to do it again. So I removed myself from that supply chain economics. And it's part of what's so empowering about being vegan. Every day I know I make a difference by what I what I pull out of my wallet, what I pay for, and that's empowering to me as somebody who cares deeply about animals. I can make a difference every day.
Amen to that. Yes, everything that we do makes a difference. So, how does the peace of not eating animals, well, the peace of not eating creatures, these beautiful creatures, manifest in your life today?
Well, it defines me day in and day out because most anyone who's a vegan knows that we live among non-vegans, people who are decent, good people, and often informed. Although I think often not informed enough about what we do to animals. I think most people still don't know what happens to male chicks when there's hatcheries where female chicks are selected for their eggs, and what happens to veal calves and what happens to their mothers, how we take the milk away and what that process is, separating the mother from the calf at birth. All these terrible trials, the baths, the hot baths that these animals go through at the slaughterhouse, hopefully completely unconscious, but often not, because it's so many animals going through the system, so mechanized that the devices designed to stun them and or kill them are often don't function properly. It's really hideous what goes on in huge numbers, and I think most people don't know about those details, and they don't really want to know. They want to be blissfully ignorant because most people are a bit like cats. We don't want to change. We don't like change, and changing your diet seems like a daunting change. I get that. I understand why it seems that way. I say seems because it isn't really that hard. I mean, there's so much to choose from. People think that veganism and plant-based eating is removing things from the diet. Look at the background of the screen with all those vegetables and mushrooms and etc. Vegans eat far more variety of food on average than non-vegans. So we love our food as much as anybody. It's not a deprivation. These are some of the things that I think people aren't aware of. They feel like it's a sacrifice, and they don't want to know what really goes on behind the scenes. So those things are very important to me. They're with me every day, and certainly food is with me every day. I love food as much as the next person, and I feel like I eat like a king. I eat like royalty. So it's an ongoing thing. My mother's a vegan too, and my partner's vegan, and we encourage people to go vegan because that's the best thing you can do for the planet, for the animals, and for your personal health, all in one fell swoop.
Yes, that's very true. And so you said your mother's vegan and your partner's vegan. So when you first went vegan, did you have supports within your family or friendships, or did you find yourself isolated in the beginning?
It's a great question, and usually the answer to that is I didn't have support. I was doing it all alone. I had to join a group and make friends, and that really helped me through. I've been very lucky that my parents were very sympathetic to these ideals. My parents never truly went completely vegan. Well, my mom is now. She turns 90 next week, and my dad's no longer with us, but he would eat fish a few times a year and feel guilty about it. But it doesn't have to be a hard line. You're either vegan or you're not. I know some vegans who are a bit militant that way. We need to encourage people to make changes because every change is to the better. Every positive change can be to the better. The Meatless Monday campaign, Veganuary, these are great campaigns that can get people on track and make them realize how great it is, and how much good food there is to eat, and how tasty it is, and how much support there is out there. How many cookbooks there are? Thousands of vegan cookbooks, I'm sure, certainly over 1,000. So these are all important things that we can do to help things along.
Right. And I love that compassion you have because for me, veganism is about kindness. And so be compassionate about people on their journey, not this hard edge where we judge. So the more compassionate I feel like, the more people will come. And it's not going to be something that it can be overwhelming if we say we have to give up everything now. So,
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, to be militant and absolutist, I don't think is very encouraging. We need to show how happy and healthy we are. I think a sense of humor is really important. I try to imbue that in my books is to make people laugh. And what's the point of caring about animals if we're not caring about our fellow humans? They're animals too. We're animals too. We're biologically defined as animals. We're sensitive, emotional. We can be hurt. We can be made to feel good. If we put on a negative face about veganism and being plant-based and all that stuff, we're not exactly a welcoming force. So I think the vegans have a responsibility to be ambassadors for the animals, ambassadors for a lifestyle that most people don't. They may be curious, but they don't think it's a very great choice for various reasons. We need to make them realize it's a super choice. It's the best choice they can make. It's really a choice that people must make if we're to have a sustainable future.
right. And this is a journey, right? And people, not everyone is able to do things right away. And to be kind, and we have some comments that we can address later at the end. We're going to be taking some of these comments and things. But honestly, I just want to say, let's please be kind here and respectful. If anyone's had a hard time in life, then we all know what it is to have a hard time in life, and let's extend empathy for all in this sacred space of this conversation. So I really encourage that.
Well said.
Well, thank you. We're very honored to have you. So it should be a sacred, safe space for everyone. Um, so tell us about your vision in your life. What does your legacy look like? What would you like, for people to say about you after years after you pass, Jonathan?
I've been lucky to be where I am. I was born into a stable family, economically secure. Never had to worry about where my next meal was going to be. Never had to worry about being called up for military service. I look back on human history and I think of today where people live in places where there's violent conflict or want and need. And then historically, just in the last century, 2 world wars that so many young men were called up for duty and lost their lives. And those who survived often come home with trauma, with terrible emotional trauma, like my granddad. So I feel very fortunate that I've been served the opportunities that I've had, able to get a high level of education, 3 university degrees, find employment in meaningful ways, earning enough to support me and my family. I have one daughter, and just being very privileged and blessed. And I'm acutely aware of that. I'm acutely aware of people who live in inner cities with food deserts where they can't get. It's easier and cheaper to get fast food, which is terribly unhealthy. It's very hard for them to get vegetables and fruits, and so there's so many imbalances and injustices in the world that need to be addressed that are all connected to this, but they're ones that are easily overlooked if we're not there, out of sight, out of mind. We need to be aware of the struggles that others have. And back to what you're saying, we need to be empathic. It's not all or nothing. It's not now or never. We need to be welcoming and patient and show people the way. And I don't mean to make that to sound like we're the teachers and we're the superior ones, not at all. But we are enlightened about an issue that is globally so important. Here's a statistic for you. I was stunned when I read this. There was an article published in a scholarly journal, a prestigious journal, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, in 2018. So 5 years or 6 years ago, this paper was published, and it was essentially they calculated based on good data. They calculated some relative biomasses. This essentially the global weight of different groups, um, humans, terrestrial animals, terrestrial mammals they did, but it really applies pretty much to terrestrial vertebrates. So all the birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians, not counting the fishes in the water. They estimated the total weight in gigatons of carbon. And 100,000 years ago, humans, of which there were more than one species of hominid at that time, made up about 0.4% of the total. So a tiny slice of the pie. The rest of the pie, wildlife. Today, wildlife, 4%. The other 96% is us, 36%, and livestock, the animals we raise to kill and eat, 60%. So I've never seen any statistic that more thoroughly illustrates that we're in the Anthropocene era now, the human-dominated era, than that. One could say we're dominated by livestock. Well, there's only that category didn't even exist 100,000 years ago, and what it means is, of course, what these numbers mean to me is two major things: too many humans, and we're eating too many animals, far and away, and we're taking away the space for all the other animals that are trying to eke out an existence on the planet. So, what do we do about too many humans? I'm not suggesting we start bumping us off. That wouldn't be compassionate. But we need to have policies that encourage fewer children, a population decline. I listened to a population balance. I think it's the name of the podcast. It's about our overpopulation. So this is a very important issue to me. If you see anything about human population in the news these days, it's almost always, oh my God, there's Japan, their population is coming down. What a crisis. They need to change their policies. They need to have more children. Ludicrous. That's so ludicrous. This isn't so much an animal rights issue, but it is an animal rights issue because if there's more people, there's less space for other species. So this is not an anti-human stance. It's intended to be a positive human stance. We already have mass migrations. We have climate change. We have people not getting enough water, not getting enough food. So I'm getting into a different issue here, a little bit ancillary to talk about animals, but it's all connected. We have to deal with our population, and we must change our eating habits. 60% livestock, that's hideous. The poultry, the total weight of poultry on the planet today, birds raised by humans for food, is 3 times the total weight of wild birds. All the wild birds combined are about a third of all the animals, all the birds we raise to eat. That's just a real travesty to my mind. So we must change our eating habits. That's the best way we can help the planet. People think, I actually had a veterinarian at an Indian vet school. The head of the dean once asked me this after I gave a talk at this vet school during a book tour in India. He said, Dr. Balcombe, going vegan and being plant-based is a wonderful idea, but what are we going to do if everybody did that? There would be not enough plants. We'd be eating too many plants. Unfortunately, he wasn't aware of the fact that being a vegan is not only the most animal-friendly diet, it's the most plant-friendly diet because you're not eating or consuming all the plants that have to be consumed by chickens, pigs, and cows and other animals we eat to make their meat. It's a very inefficient way of it. So if you want to help plants as well, go vegan because we're not consuming anywhere near as many plants as we would be on a meat diet. So that's a common misconception people have, and I wanted to address that. So I'm kind of rambling a little bit here. I don't even remember what your question was, but I hope some of it's a little bit interesting and enlightening for people.
It is very enlightening. Yes. My question was about the legacy, and it's like everything you're doing is an amazing legacy that is going to be rippling out, and it's rippling out now. So it's beautiful. And I love your compassion for all and your patience on the journey. And it's so these are so important to recognize, and that humans are animals too. So as vegans, we have to care for the human animals. And what you said about we're not better than others, we are very blessed to have awakened, and that someone else has not awakened. And our hatefulness or our anger at them is not going to help them awaken.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. As we've said, being positive, being welcoming, being patient, being empathic. That's the bottom line, being empathic, caring for others, putting ourselves in their place, recognizing the trials of life that they face as well as us, and being encouraging and showing them the way and being patient. It's hard to be patient sometimes, but if you push people too hard, it's like the physics, the basic law of one of the laws of thermodynamics, I think. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you push hard, things push back at you. People tend to entrench and resist. So that's partly why we need to be patient.
Right. And in this, I really want to say, get care for yourself because it can be very frustrating and find outlets to heal and acknowledge all your feelings and acknowledge. I mean, for me, I think has kind of helped me is saying prayers for the animals while I think in the for the little fish, right? These fishes that are that are living out there and that are having a hard time on this earth. And and I love the way you say fishes. So can you tell us why we're referring to fish as fishes? Fishes.
Sure. And before I do that, for me, a tool that I use is affirmation, where I've compiled a list of a dozen or so positive statements like, I'm the master of my life. I don't fear anything, although that's not very good affirmation because that's a negative. I don't. Most affirmations are meant to be in the positive way. So they're worded carefully to express something positive for myself because I have my challenges, I have my insecurities, I have things that I grapple with in life, and it helps me to be more positive and to be more centered and focused and calm, loving and accepting, etc. Now, fishes. Yeah, I mean, I grew up like most people saying fish is the collective term. Fish is singular, fish is plural. The word fishes, Fishes, is a legitimate word in scientific circles, such as the one that I've lived in most of my life. It's referring to more than one species of fish. So if you're talking about goldfish and trouts and sharks and swordfish and what have you, those are different species, different groups, and so the scientists would say fishes. But if you're talking about a bunch of one kind, then we typically would say fish. It's a handy term. We say sheep, we say bison. We have other examples of animals who we don't pluralize with an es or with an s on the end. The reason I'm a bit dogmatic about fishes and why I think it's a better way to refer to them is that it speaks to them being individuals. You know, you could look at a school, a huge shoal or school of 10 million herring migrating up the African coast and say, you know, how can you say they're all individuals? They're just, they all look the same to me. They may to us, but every single one is an absolutely unique individual with a personality, with preferences, with life experiences that are unique to them, just as we have. And there's actually good science on this. I mean, certainly my book would show people that the fishes have emotions and feelings and cognition, that they think and feel. But there's also other scientists who've looked at personalities and find that guppies, for instance, there's a published paper, at least one paper on personalities in guppies, those tiny little fish. Just because they're small doesn't mean they're not complex and unique. Look at insects. I'm just stunned when I see sometimes a tiny insect that I can barely see on a page, smaller than the period at the end of a sentence. Walking along may stop and groom itself, may stretch its wings, or may fly off. The complexity of that, as someone once said, a German author actually, and an amateur entomologist, he said there are as many organs in a fly as in a leviathan or a whale. I love that, and it speaks to the brilliance with which nature, evolution, God, whatever you want to call it, can miniaturize things, and that so much complexity can be packed into a small space. And now we're seeing studies finding that uh, insects appear to be sentient. There's a study published a couple of years ago showing joy in bumblebees, for instance. They've been shown to solve problems. Wasps have been shown to recognize each other by faces. Ants appear to have some mirror self-recognition. These are considered pretty high-level cognitive characteristics of animals. As for the joy study, they found that bumblebees would, rather than fly straight ahead down to a chamber where there was food, nectar available for them, they would happily take a detour. They prefer to take a detour to fly around with colored balls, wooden balls that they could roll around and essentially play with them. It looks like play behavior. It fits the formal scientific criteria for play behavior, which there's 5 criteria. Fits all of those. So they go and play, have a game of soccer, if you like, before they go and get the food. If the balls were glued to the floor, they were much less attracted to them because they couldn't roll them around, whereas the ones that were loose. So these are the kinds of tests and questions that scientists today are asking. And they're not asking that of rats, well, they are. They're asking that of bumblebees. I mean, that says so much that scientists think, oh, you know, what we're seeing with these bumblebees, they're pretty complex. They appear to have emotions. They might even like playing. Let's try this experiment. So they set this up, and lo and behold, the bees did like to play with the balls before having lunch. Mind-blowing. I find that mind-blowing. And this is scholarly stuff. This is peer-reviewed journals. Scientists review these manuscripts, and they don't accept them for publication if they're not rigorous. So they're carefully done. Lars Chitka is the name of the particular lab, his lab in London, England, who does this. And this is just one of several studies that he and his graduate students have done. Very exciting. We're in a very exciting time. So fishes, just as much as insects, and probably one could argue more, they're individual, they're independent, they do show play, they show tool use, they show problem solving, they show individual recognition, they fall for optical illusions like we do. The list goes on of all their achievements, both not just cognitive, but also emotional. They know stress, they like to get a massage, it helps to de-stress them. This is all in my book, and it's published in journals. So I think they deserve to be referred to as individuals, which is why I favor the word fishes over fish, if I'm referring to more than one.
Yes, I think you're right. And why don't more people know this or listen when the studies are out? Why doesn't that just change the world?
I'll tell you why. It's because most of these studies are published in scholarly journals that most people don't have the inkling of, or they're not inclined to read. Because how many of us read scholarly journals? I do, because I write books, and that's where I think I can make an impact, is by being a synthesizer, looking at the science, making it accessible to non-scientists. Sure, I hope that scientists read my books, but my books are primarily targeted at lay readers, interested people who are interested in science, interested in animals, animal behavior. I try to translate the science into something that's more palatable and digestible to non-scientists. So I try and remove the jargon and focus on the findings and what they mean for not just for the animals, but our relationship to them. That's always a part of my message, particularly at the end of the book, my books. I try to link it all to the human condition, to our relationships with them, and how that can be improved for the better of all.
Well, amen to that. Yes, and that makes sense. And thank goodness you're out there giving us easy to understand, because really I couldn't get through a scholarly journal very well at all. So definitely.
Believe me, I struggle too. Some papers, it's like, what are they talking about saying here? It's not easy for anyone. Some of this stuff.
Right. No, it's not. And what would you say about people that say, well, at least I don't eat cows, I just eat fish? And what would you say about that to someone about the environmental impact of eating fish, that thinks that they're doing better? Now, I'm not saying that something's better or worse. I'm just saying, what would you say to that?
Well, first I would laud them, applaud them for not eating cows. Like, great, you're thinking about things, you're making steps according to what you know, and then I would probably chide them and say, I have to say, I'm pretty convinced based on what you just told me that you haven't read this wonderful book called What a Fish Knows, because it contains information that might make you think twice about eating fishes. So I would probably cajole them that way, but definitely I would want to point out, and others can point out that there's no reason why fishes should be seen as anything lesser than cows. I love cows; they're fantastic. I'm not demeaning cows. I'm raising the status of fishes here. But if you look at the list of achievements of fishes, and I went through a few a little bit earlier, they're just as complex. They're full members of the vertebrate group. They've actually had the benefit of evolving 400,000 years, quite a bit longer than terrestrial mammals have. So one could argue that in that sense, they've had more time to develop more sophisticated abilities, mental and emotional, and social too. Their social lives are interesting. I'll give one example here about what fishes can do. There's a species called rabbit fishes. They're reef fishes. There's various species, and in a number of species, if not all of them. And by the way, we've only recently begun to really look closely at the lives of fishes under the water, because we didn't have scuba before, didn't have underwater cinematography, and now we have all that, so we can probe into their lives and learn much more about them. But the rabbit fishes, they practice something that would be defined as virtuous by scientists, because in this case, it's delayed gratification from food in this case. So when a rabbitfish is foraging by nibbling at the algae on the reef, and their head's down, they're in the reef, it's a bit vulnerable because they can't see a predator coming. Wouldn't it be nice to have a lookout? And that's what they do. They tend to forage in pairs. So one fish is head down, the other one is head out, looking out, and not eating, of course. So they're waiting to have their food while the other one eats more safely. Then, of course, as you can imagine, they switch. So the one who was playing lookout gets to eat, and the one who was eating gets to play lookout. That way, they both feed in a much more safe way by helping each other. This is a lovely example of virtue in animals. And it's far and away not the only one. There's other examples that in fishes and many other species as well, where they show selfless behavior. They show behavior that is showing consideration for others. We spoke about empathy before. Maybe they have empathy too.
Right. Yeah, that makes me want to cry because these beautiful animals, they're so rich with inner wisdom, and we are so blind to it, and then we treat them as they're worthless and not worthy of anything. It breaks my heart. So I'm so thankful that you are out here doing everything you can.
Yeah, I think part of that is they have the disadvantage of having evolved in a different milieu than us. We are evolved as air breathing, air communicating species. We don't hear the sounds they make in the air, but underwater they make all sorts of sounds. Fishes actually communicate a lot by sound, but we don't see facial expressions. We don't. They don't have signals that we tend to be able to relate to. So it takes stepping back, realizing that the cues that as to what's going on in their bodies maybe are not ones that we're very good at recognizing. So that's why scientists do things like they'll measure stress hormones in the blood. So not all these studies are very pleasant for the fishes because they have needles stuck into them. Sometimes they're given a shot of acid to see if they feel pain, etc. It'd be nice if we just said, let's give them the benefit of the doubt they do feel pain. But given that these studies are done and published, and that they do relate to misconceptions people may have about these animals and their capabilities, I cite them. I'm not endorsing them necessarily, but they're there. Why not make good on them and use those studies to show people that actually, yes, fishes do feel pain. Yes, fishes do have fear. Yes, they do feel stress. Yes, they can seek stress relief by getting caressed by a cleaner wrasse. And yes, they know where to go to get their parasites removed by fishes on cleaning stations. And yes, they have social lives. Yes, they have preferences. Yes, they have individual personalities. Again, the list is long. I've got a 3-page document here that summarizes all these sort of key points. I won't go through them. People would start to doze. But it is fascinating stuff. But just reeling it off, no pun intended, is probably not the best way to describe it. But definitely, if you look and see what these animals are scientifically shown to be capable of, we should think twice about eating them. If we stop eating cows, to be consistent, we should stop eating fishes too. So I encourage people to learn more about them and make your diet reflect what you know.
Exactly, yes. I mean, it's up to us to educate ourselves. So that's a great point. And everyone, please put your questions in the chat because we're going to start taking some questions in a little bit. Also, I'm sorry if people are having problems tracking down the live stream. I've seen a couple of comments. So let's go on. Tell me, Jonathan, please, about your latest project, your latest book that's coming out.
Yeah, it took a while before I cottoned on to what I was going to write next. I did feel like I have enough time in my life and energy that I wanted to write another book, and it does provide a lot of meaning to me as a human being who is somewhat retired. I say retired with a small r because I find I'm just as busy. It's just that instead of going to an office and doing somebody else's bidding 5 days a week, I get to decide what I work on and how often and what time of day. And it is a luxury. It is lovely. This afternoon, I'll get on my bike and bike down to the city library and work there. It's a nice studious atmosphere, and I get a nice little workout before and after that. So I am working on a book. I recently signed a contract with William Morrow, a venerable publisher, part of the HarperCollins group, to write a book about, how shall I just describe this? The kinder side of nature, if you like. The idea of the book is to repudiate the popular misconception that nature is red in tooth and claw, that it is all about competition, it's violent, it's predator prey. It's all of those things. I'm not denying the challenges that wild animals face, just as we face our own challenges. But there's so much goodness in nature as well. There's so much collaboration, so many symbioses. Symbioses rule the planet, where other animals interact with other species, plants and animals. They're codependent, interdependent. I mentioned virtue in rabbit fishes. There's a lot of virtuous behavior that happens. It can all be attributed to evolution or creation, however you want to look at it. But the fact is, it's there. It's adaptive, and animals work together a lot and collaborate. So this book is my effort to bring that to light, to give examples through both science and stories. I've learned as a science writer that the facts can go here if you're doing a good job, but if you want to reach people here, you got to have stories because people engage emotionally with stories. So, like my other books, it'll be a combination of science and storytelling. And when I say storytelling, I don't mean fiction. I mean it's real stories, but they're enlightening and they have revelations that perhaps the science doesn't always have, or they go hand in hand with the science. So it's about the nobility of life and how animals and nature finds paths towards goodness. I quite like that turn of phrase. I might have to write that down. So anyway, that's the goal. My delivery date is December 31st, 2025. So I still have 18 months to finish it. I've got 80,000 words now, most of which will be discarded. That's part of the process of writing. At this stage, I'm a sponge. I'm getting it all down on paper, getting it all in, well, on this computer actually, getting it all in. There's a growing discard pile, as there is with all the books I've written. But it's a challenge, and it's an exciting project. I'm delighted to be doing it. Feel extremely privileged to have the opportunity and the skills and the education and the ingredients that I have to write books that are, I know from emails from readers, that do affect people, that do affect how people feel, do affect their views, do affect their lifestyle decisions. There's no better compliment to me as an author than hearing from somebody who makes some change to their lifestyle, usually food related, because of what they read in my books.
Yes, I bet that really touches your heart when
Oh,
someone makes the connection.
for sure, absolutely.
Yes. Well, I actually work a lot with snakes. I volunteer at my nature center, a
We
local
love
nature
snakes.
center.
I love snakes.
I know I love snakes too. I used to be, I mean, because I grew up in a world that seems to hate snakes. I used to be afraid of snakes. I didn't hate them, I was afraid. But now I love the dance holding a snake. And so what would you say to defend snakes if someone said, I'm scared of snakes or they're terrible or all these myths about snakes? What would you say to that person?
To receive that question, it makes me think that you must have been looking at my manuscript for my next book, because actually there's quite a lot of snake content in there. Not just because I love snakes, but because they're so terribly misunderstood, and there's some very interesting science emerging about snakes. Finally, I mean, they're tough to study because they don't show facial expressions that we can relate to. We can't smell their pheromones. They communicate chemically to us quite a lot. When their tongue comes out, they're actually literally licking the air and taking in molecules, and that they're testing the air. So a nervous snake the tongue is coming out a lot more. It turns out rattlesnakes are sociable, and that they have family groups, and that they will babysit. So one mother rattlesnake will stay behind to look after the babies of several mother rattlesnakes while the other mothers go off to find food. They come back. It's a little bit like the rabbit fishes, and they probably change places. They must change places because otherwise the one babysitting would starve. So they have social lives, and they have lifelong companionships. Snakes who they return to hibernate with every year, or to rest and shelter with under a rock or what have you. So they're not just mindless, cold-blooded reptiles that just go on about their lives in solitary, without any social life. Of course, all animals have to get together to mate, but this is so much more than that. And I just read a paper yesterday about personality in snakes. We shouldn't be surprised. We have the proverbial saying that no two grains of sand are the same. We can say that about all animals, as I said about herrings earlier. Of course, grains of sand probably aren't sentient, they're little rocks. They don't have feelings and they have or emotion, so we should certainly preserve all of nature, including plants and abiotic things like sand. And animals depend on those, and plants depend on those. It's all interdependent anyway. We should be respectful of all of nature and all of the planet. But a snake is more complex than a grain of sand in terms of the behavior and the emotional capacities. and they have individual personalities. So it's just another dimension of an animal we often don't like. We don't like them because we tend to be afraid of them. That's often taught into us. Um, but if we respect them, they'll tend to respect us back. If we treat them well, treat them with respect, they're not going to come after us. Snakes don't chase people anyway. The only time a snake goes towards somebody is almost invariably because they're trying to get to water or some safer place, and the human happens to be between them and that place. So once again, rambling a little bit, but snakes are near and dear to my heart, and I tend to give them some plugs in my next book.
Oh, I love it. Yes, and that's so funny that you said. I mean, about the chasing. I always grew up with this idea that if a snake saw me, the snake was going to come chase me down and bite me, and I would be dead, which is ridiculous. I
Yeah,
mean, but
what's the gain from that, right? Yeah, the snake's going to eat you, yeah, as if the biggest snake in the world might be able to swallow a small human, but that's exceptional. And snakes don't see us as food; they see us as enemies, and they may be afraid of us with darn good reason. So they may defend themselves, but that's all they're doing is defending themselves.
right, exactly. There was a naturalist that was telling me a story of another friend of his who was a naturalist, and she was leading a group of kindergartners, little children, 6 years old, um, and they were out in the fields and walking, walking, walking. And then she saw them start to step really funny over something, and she looked back and like, "What's going on here?" And it turned out to be, I don't remember if it was a rattlesnake or a copperhead, but it was a venomous snake. He was a venom. I don't want to say it. He was a venomous snake, and just fine. The children were not afraid. The snake wasn't afraid. Nobody was bothering, So the naturalist said, please, when you see a snake, please step away from the snake. But it was just, there was no element of fear, and that snake wasn't going to hurt unless he felt endangered. So I love telling that story because, again, because I know that I used to think that if a snake saw me, he was going to just end my life. But that's not true.
Yeah, some people may not know that on rare occasions when people get bitten by, say, a rattlesnake, it's often a dry bite, meaning they don't inject any venom. They need the venom for other purposes. They're afraid, they're scared, they're trying to defend themselves and protect themselves. Of course, no one wants to get bitten by any snake. I was bitten a few times as a kid because I would pick them up and I was fascinated by them, but that would be garter snakes and water snakes and the like. So we should try not to harass them, and I have harassed them, not with the intention of harassing them, but because I want to get a photograph. The last snake I caught was a smooth green snake here in Ontario 3 years ago to get some photographs, and it's a snake I've rarely seen, and I was so thrilled to see it. I picked it up, didn't bite me at all, didn't even try. Very docile snake, very sweet. I got some great pictures, and it was worth it for me. Obviously, the snake would have preferred I'd left it completely alone, but of course we quickly released it again after getting some pics.
Right. Yes. No, I understand definitely. They're such beautiful creatures, and
Stunning, stunning.
they are right. And I remember hearing this. Is this true that they said if a little baby snake bites you, that if you pull the baby snake off, you can pull out the poor little guy's teeth? I mean, the whole set.
I've never heard that, but I can imagine it could be damaging. So, of course, most people don't want a snake latched onto them. But I will remember that you said that. I'd not heard that before, but I could envision why those tiny little delicate teeth could be harmed, and try to gently discourage them from continuing to bite.
Right. I think they said put your hand wherever the little snake is latched on underwater to try to get the
That's a
little
good
snake.
idea. We have to see it from their perspective. It's so easy to just see it through our eyes. I was driving on a road in Maryland about 7 or 8 years ago, and a garter snake came out and was on the middle of the road, and it was like I was able to get by, but I looked back and my heart sank because another car was behind me coming along. And I looked in my rearview mirror as this snake went right under the car, and miraculously, it was not a small snake; it was about two and a bit feet long, and it was stretched out. Miraculously, the car didn't hit it. I don't think the driver took any evasive action. Probably didn't even see the snake. And I quickly pulled my car over, got out, ran over to the snake, who had by now reached the far side of the road at the curb. There was a curb, in gratitude, quote unquote, for my picking the snake up and helping it over the curb. I got bitten. It's a garter snake. They do tend to bite. The snake didn't have any ill intentions with me. The snake was scared shitless, to be blunt, and was defending itself. How would it think I'm helping it? It's been trying to cross a road, cars going over it. This big human comes along, picks it up. You got to see it from their perspective. So So that's how I saw it. I didn't at all begrudge that the snake took a little bite at me. I was happy to see that snake free and go safely into the woods. So these things
Right.
happen. Try and help animals, but it's definitely it's not the safest thing to take animals over roads. You have to be careful. I've done it. I do it, and I only do it under safe conditions. And I do keep a rescue kit in the trunk of my car as well, which includes a blanket, which is very handy for snapping turtles, for instance, getting them across the road. And the rule is always take them over the direction they were pointing. Otherwise, they'll just turn around and go back and try again.
Yes, there's so many things that we need to learn about that, and that don't take them out of their little zone where they are, because they'll spend the rest of their life trying to get back. Just like we have our homes, they have their habitat. So it's very
Absolutely.
important.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, I love this conversation, but let's see. I want to stop for a minute and get some questions here or have some comments. We have, well, let's see. James is saying he has more compassion and empathy for animals than he does for humans. So remember the human animal, James, and that's beautiful. Compassion and empathy. Um, and then we have what would you say to this, to Devin here, who says compassion should be reserved for the compassionate?
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Oh, I see. I have some other ones. Okay. Well, anyway, compassion should be reserved for the compassionate. Um, yeah, I think compassion is for the compassionate. It's for the non-compassionate as well. I think karma. What goes around comes around. If we're compassionate, life's better. It's not just that we're showing goodness to others. We're showing goodness to ourselves. We're being more gentle and compassionate toward ourselves because it's all connected. Positivity promotes positivity, and negativity, unfortunately, is the opposite. So we should not be stinting in our compassion and our love. Love is not a quantity. It's not like you use it up. There's so much love, and you use it up. Oh, you've used it. You don't have any love. No one's going to agree with that statement. It's a capacity that has the wonderful property of building on itself and growing from itself. So the more love we show, the more love we'll feel, the more we'll be loved. It all comes around, and I think the karma idea is operational in those kinds of things. Compassion and love are universal, indivisible, and they're self-reinforcing.
That's very beautiful what you're saying because it warms the earth. Luckily, you're right. There's no limit to love, and all that can do is heal.
And I don't speak that as like an expert. I mean, I'm a human. I go through the trials of life. I faced many challenges in my own life. Usually, they come from me. It's my own fault for those challenges. And we're constantly learning. I'm 65, and I still feel like I've got so much more to learn. But definitely we do gain wisdom and self understanding. I still have foibles and weaknesses in my personality, but I have much more self understanding than I did when I was in my 20s or 30s, and that's part of growth and development. And a lot of that is keeping an open mind and an open heart. So anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, very curiosity, openness, like to learning always. And our brain is always growing and always learning, even on our deathbed. So we might as well keep going. We don't want to be stagnant. All right. And so Marcin is saying, greetings from Poland. Today is the premiere of your book.
Yeah, I've not met Marcin, but he's a great friend of my book, What a Fish Knows, the Polish edition of which is launching today, and he's been promoting that on Facebook. I'm really grateful for his compassion and enthusiasm in doing that. That's been my most successful book, and it's available in I think 17 foreign editions now. The Polish one being just the latest. So it's extremely gratifying to me that publishers have the wisdom and the kindness to recognize what my book's trying to do and to make it available to more audiences worldwide. But thank you, Marcin.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And we got a question from him. If we look at invertebrate taxa, which taxa do you think mental life and the cognitive system begin phylogenetically?
Yeah, phylogenetically refers to kind of on the evolutionary tree or bush. Or I like bush because it doesn't imply that one is higher than the other. It's just things branch out in different directions. So yeah, it's a great question. We talked about invertebrates a little earlier. I think probably the ones that would strike the most interest with most people these days are the cephalopod mollusks, that is to say octopuses, squids, cuttlefish, and nautiluses. That's the four major subgroups of that group, particularly octopuses. There are few people on this website right now, or in society even, who haven't heard of My Octopus Teacher, that film that captured the world about 3 years ago. I think it won an Oscar for Best Documentary, about a South African swimmer, photographer, who befriended an octopus in the ocean. And anyway, not to digress too much, octopuses have shown remarkable cognitive, mental, and emotional capacities. They're widely acknowledged now by science as sentient, conscious, feeling creatures. And so, if I was trying to make the case of having a mental life and a cognitive system, as Morrison asks, I would say octopuses would be the lowest hanging fruit. But that's not to deny cognition and probably emotionality in, as I said earlier, bumblebees and social insects, ants, bees, and moths are incredibly complex through their eusociality. They're a peak, high level of sociality that on many measures is far more social than even humans. So insects are coming into the game. There's published studies on sentience in crustaceans, crabs, and lobsters. Heaven forbid that lobsters are sentient, because we think about how that must feel for them to be trapped in boiling water. But the science shows they're sentient. There's not just, it's not an it. There's someone in there, and we often overlook it and struggle to recognize it because their bodies are so different. The crustacean is, to our sensibilities, like a snake trapped inside its body. It doesn't have the tools to express things the way we recognize them, because it didn't evolve with humans. It's not, we're not relevant to its social history. But you can bet your life that a fellow lobster recognizes a male or a female at least when they see one, or smell one, and they have other channels of sensory communication that allow them to do things and recognize things that we don't recognize because we're not one of them.
Yes, exactly. And I know that the Optimus movie on Netflix really did change and open up people's minds. So, gosh, we need more like that. And I'm glad to see the movement is shifting. So, I mean, I have faith. And here's what Trish was actually talking to me about. She was very excited about this live stream, Jonathan. She was saying, What a Fish Knows was truly one of my favorite books. I had already given up eating fish after an encounter with a grouper while scuba diving. All of life is amazing, perhaps more so those in the sea.
Well, hi Trish. I'm pretty sure I met Trish. I think she lives in Southern Florida, and I met her when I was living down there a few years ago. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for caring about fishes. And she mentions groupers, a fantastic fish. I mean, there's many species. They can grow to, a Goliath grouper can grow to, I think, six or more feet long, and can weigh 800 pounds. I mean, they can get huge, some of the groupers, but they are predatory fishes of reefs, and they engage in interspecific communication with moray eels, which are another fairly large predator of reefs. They're groupers and morays who actually hunt together. They work together, and the grouper invites the moray with a head shake. To us, it looks like no, but to them, it's, will you come foraging with me? And if the moray eel wants to, off they go. And these are not just willy nilly; they know each other from past experiences. So they're like companionships over time, and they catch more fishes for each other. They each get more fishes per unit of effort if they work together than if they work alone, because their styles complement each other. A fish who swims into the matrix of the reef can be pursued by the moray eel because it's long and sleek, a little bit like a ferret of the sea. If the fish escapes into the open water, well, who's waiting? The grouper. So it's not good news for the target fish. So that's interspecific communication, referential signaling, very high cognitive skill. Groupers, such as Nassau groupers, will also swim up to trusted divers to get caressed, to get stroked. It feels nice to them, and there's science to back that up. Science to back up that a stressed fish relaxes when they're caressed.
Mm,
Who knew? Who would have thought until we have the science for it?
that's beautiful, yes. And so we have a couple of comments here. There are science communicators like Anne Green and Brian Green are sympathetic to animal rights. Some give lip service like Dawkins. There's those who are belligerent to animal rights like Neil Tyson. what can we do to get science communicators to get the animal rights message?
Interesting. I think the questioner is referring to Neil deGrasse Tyson. I have not met him. I've not seen a lot of his work. He's obviously influential, brilliant guy, interesting guy. I didn't know he was antagonistic to animal rights. Well, we need to work on him, I guess. Um, Dawkins, yeah, brilliant guy. What an incredible contribution to the Selfish Gene and his other books that he's written. But he is a bit of a provocateur. I think maybe Tyson is as well. I didn't know that about Andrewen, and I can't see the message anymore because it's gone from my screen. And the other person she mentioned, but Luminary. Oh, Brian Greene, Luminary. I don't know Brian Greene, I'm afraid. But these luminaries, through their writing, mainly through their writing, I think, that's part of the challenge. We're not just happily ensconced in our own lives. That's great, but we want change elsewhere too. We need it. The planet's in trouble. It needs to survive, and we need to have a better, more respectful relationship with other species. We have to have that. Absolutely have to have that, because we've got to stop overrunning the planet with our numbers and our food choices, which are mostly pretty abysmal. So we've got a long way to go. And work on those luminaries. Send them information that might get them to start changing their minds.
Right. Yes, we can all do something. We can't do everything, but we can all do something.
Here in
Yeah.
Canada, sorry, Kita. Here in Canada, we have David Suzuki, a brilliant scientist who's very much a communicator of science through the nature of things. He's been running, I think, for 50 years now. He's somewhat stepped away from that now, but he's still very influential. He's in his mid 80s writing books. He loves fishing, and if you read his autobiography, his pictures of him catching fish, and he and I have corresponded in recent months, and he talks about how his grandson caught a big Chinook salmon, and to me, it's a little bit of a blind spot, but I have to understand, he's a very learned, educated, aware man. I hope he reads my book, What a Fish Knows, but he does so much good. He's such an effective educator, and he's so passionate about the planet. He's a force for good, and I look at it through that lens. I don't look at it as this is a guy who needs educating about fishes, maybe, but he knows a lot more than I do about other things. So I respect him, and I feel nothing but compassion for him and what he does.
Oh, I love that you're saying that because that brings up a good point about people that are like, oh, these people don't love animals because they eat them. Well, they love animals. I believe, this is my belief, they do love animals. They just are not awake and they don't see this whole scope of the big picture. I know that I loved animals before I became vegan. And I wasn't a bad person. I just wasn't awakened.
Sure, we're very good at categorizing things. We can pet a sheep on a petting zoo or an animal sanctuary in the morning, and then eat mutton for dinner later, or lamb for dinner the next day. To complete disconnect, they're completely different categories. There's the animal I met in a social setting, and there's the animal who I never met who's on my plate. We need to encourage people to draw those connections and realize that there's no difference between the two.
Exactly, yes. And Trish said she saw you at the vegan Thanksgiving potluck. So
Oh,
yes, that's right. Because I actually had a little vegan picnic with her, and she was excited about this live stream. So I love that. And here we have Veganology JJ, who's a great channel. And she says, if we could see things from other people's perspective and the animals, it can make a big difference in this world. I love this conversation. Thanks for sharing this.
yeah, go forth with compassion and respect, mutual respect. If you don't respect someone, you have no chance of influencing what choices they may make. But if you respect them as a fellow human, uh, total different story. There's all sorts of potential.
Right. That's exactly right. When we take the time to accept the differences and without judgment. So a snake has a different body, a lobster has a different body, and when we're curious, I wonder what it's like to be a snake or a lobster. Then
Yeah,
we can really
great
change.
exercise. We need to try and put ourselves in their position, in their place.
Right. Yes. Well, it looks like we're coming to the end of the hour, and I wanted to thank everyone for watching and for joining us. And I want to make sure James and Devin and Marcin and let's see, Trish and Sagan, Samara, JJ, um, and also to make sure everyone knows where to reach you. And you said your new book is coming out in December 25.
That's when I deliver the finished manuscript. So it could be late 26, possibly early 27. So it's a little way off yet.
So, great. So this is a lesson in patience, everyone. Patience. And so where can we find you, Jonathan, if
You can
people
go to
want to
my website, www.jonathanbalcombe.com. And I do a bi-monthly newsletter, all things fish and flies. So people can subscribe there through my website. And I'm on Facebook as well.
wonderful. So, well, I want to thank everyone for watching. And Jonathan, thank you so much. It's really been inspiring. I can't wait to go back to the Nature Center with all this newfound wisdom.
Thanks for having me, Marquita. And yes, thanks to the people who tuned in. I really appreciate that as well.
Yes, and I want to make sure everybody also knows to go to www.all-creatures.org to check out hundreds of thousands of pages of free resources updated daily, 7 days a week, without break. Or sign up for our weekly newsletter. Be sure to search vegan churches on our site to find vegan, faith-based resources near you. And if you know of a vegan resource that's not on our list, please reach out to our executive director, Tams at all-creatures.org. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.